The spaceport on Earth was always noisy, filled with different species walking, talking, and rushing toward ships. Mira stood still in the middle of it all, her silver uniform pressed and perfect. She was a Cerealian, tall and graceful, with pale blue skin and clear silver eyes. She came from a race known for logic and discipline. This was her first assignment outside the Empire. She held a small data tablet in her hand. It showed the name of the vessel she would board, Unity, a human diplomatic cruiser traveling to nearby systems. Mira's job was simple: observe, report, do not interfere. Inside, she repeated the rules given by her superiors. Humans are unstable. They smile too much. They speak without thought. They act on emotion. Be careful. Mira thought the mission would be boring. What could she learn from being so primitive? She walked up the boarding ramp and entered the ship. The walls were metal, soft lights glowing along the ceiling. A human officer greeted her with a wide smile. "Welcome aboard, Ambassador Mira. I'm Lena, your assigned contact." Mira nodded politely. "I'm here to observe only. I do not require assistance." Lena laughed. "Still, let me show you around." As they walked through the halls, Mira noticed how the human crew laughed with each other. One was singing while working on a panel. Another handed a snack to a fellow crew member. Their energy felt strange. Finally, they reached engineering. "This is where the fun happens," Lena said, pressing a button to open the door. Inside, metal pipes and blinking lights lined the walls. At the center, a human crouched beneath a console, covered in grease. He stood up quickly, wiping his hands on his pants. "Sorry, just fixing the coolant valve." He looked at Mira and smiled. "You must be the Cerealian. I'm Darren, engineer. I keep this old ship flying." Mira blinked. He looked nothing like the sharp and serious workers of her people. His brown hair was messy, his clothes wrinkled, and his eyes bright with humor. "You are responsible for maintenance?" she asked. He laughed. "Yeah, scary thought, huh?" Mira frowned. "That is not encouraging." Darren raised his hands in defense. "Don't worry. I've only let the ship catch fire once." She didn't know if he was joking or serious. His face showed no shame, only warmth. Lena smiled at the two of them. "Mira will be staying with us for 2 weeks. She'll be observing every department. Try not to scare her off, Darren." Darren nodded. "I'll be on my best behavior." Mira turned to leave. She had no interest in wasting time with jokes and grease. But as the door closed behind her, she heard Darren humming a song. The melody stayed in her ears longer than she expected. That night, Mira sat in her private room. It was small, but clean. Her data tablet floated beside her as she typed her report. Day 1. Human crew seems disorganized. To relaxed, engineer Darren appears inefficient, though highly confident. Further observation required. She closed the report and leaned back. Her room was quiet, but her mind was not. She kept seeing his face grinning, full of ease. Why did he smile so much? The next day, Mira followed the schedule. She watched. The medical team performed checkups. She stood in the command center as officers plotted a course. She joined the food hall and saw how humans joked, shared food, and even sang during breaks. They seemed comfortable. It confused her. On Cerealian ships, everything was quiet. Every move was planned, every word had weight. But here, things were different. In the evening, Mira passed through engineering again. She found Darren sitting cross-legged under a control panel, tools spread around him. He looked up and grinned. "You again? Thought I scared you off." "I do not get scared easily," she replied. "Good," he said, sliding out from under the panel. "Then you can hand me that wrench." Mira picked up the tool and gave it to him. He began working. Again, humming softly. "Why do you do that?" she asked. "Humming helps me think," he said. "Also keeps the silence away." "Silence is useful," she said. Darren smiled. "Maybe for some. But I like noise. It reminds me I'm alive." She tilted her head. "Strange." He looked at her with interest. "You've never just sat around with music on, or danced when no one was looking?" "No," she answered. "There's no purpose." "That is the purpose," he said. Makes you feel good. Mira said nothing. She didn't understand, but for some reason, she didn't leave. Later that night, she added to her report. Human behavior continues to appear chaotic, but not dangerous. They use noise, jokes, and music in daily tasks, purpose unclear, observation ongoing. She paused, then added another line. Engineer Darren smiles even when alone. She stared at the sentence. Why had she written that? On the third day, the ship landed on a rocky planet to refuel at an automated station. Mira joined the landing crew to observe. Darren was also part of the team. Carrying a heavy tool pack, the wind on the surface was strong. Dust blew in their faces. As they walked to the fuel station, the ground beneath them gave way. A loud crack echoed. Mira felt the earth shift, and before she could move, the ground collapsed. She fell into darkness. Her back hit the floor hard, and pain shot through her leg. Round her, the cave was dim and cold. Mira, are you all right? Darren's voice echoed above. I think my leg is hurt, she replied. Within moments, Darren slid down beside her, landing carefully. What are you doing? She asked. Getting you out, he said. He checked her leg quickly, then opened his pack. It's not broken, just twisted. He wrapped her ankle, then took off his jacket and placed it over her. She tried to refuse. I'm not cold. Your body says different, he replied. The cave was dark and quiet, except for the wind above. They sat side by side, waiting for rescue. Darren pulled out a small light and placed it between them. You ever seen stars from down here? He asked. She shook her head. He pointed upward, where a narrow opening showed the sky. Different view. Same stars. Mira followed his gaze. Her shoulder rested slightly against his arm. She felt warmth. Real warmth. Not just from the jacket, but from his presence. And for the first time, she didn't want to move away. The cave was quiet except for the soft hum of wind coming through the crack above. Mira sat beside Darren, her ankle wrapped tightly, her back against the stone wall. The emergency light cast a soft yellow glow between them. Time passed slowly. Darren reached into his pack and pulled out a ration bar. He broke it in half and handed one piece to Mira. She looked at it, unsure. It's not great, he said, chewing his half, but it keeps you alive. Mira took the piece carefully. She tasted it. It was dry and slightly sweet. You eat this often? She asked. Only when things go wrong, he replied. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Darren spoke again. So, do Cerealians always send their best and brightest into underground caves? Mira glanced at him. This was not part of the plan. He chuckled. Yeah, life rarely is. She watched him as he leaned his head back and stared at the narrow opening above. Tell me something, Darren said. What do Cerealians do for fun? Fun? Mira repeated the word like it was foreign. Yeah. Do you play games? Watch shows? Listen to music? We study. We improve ourselves. We share knowledge. That is enough. No hobbies. No silly dances when no one's watching. She shook her head. Darren grinned. Well, we'll have to fix that. Mira raised an eyebrow. Why would you fix something that is not broken? Because there's more to living than just surviving, he said. Trust me. His voice was calm, filled with quiet confidence. He looked at her not like a stranger, not like a soldier, but like a person. No fear, no wall. Mira felt something stir in her chest. She turned her gaze away and said nothing. Hours passed. Rescue was delayed. The comms were blocked by the rock above. Mira and Darren stayed close, trying to stay warm. The temperature had dropped, and the walls felt cold to the touch. Darren noticed Mira shivering. Without a word, he took the rest of his jacket and gently placed it around her shoulders. She tensed. That is not necessary. You're cold, he said softly. It's all right. I've got layers. Mira held the jacket tightly. It smelled of metal and oil, but also something warm, something human. I've never seen a Cerealian up close before, Darren said after a while. And I've never spoken this long with a human, she replied. What do you think so far? Mira was quiet. Then she said, You're different from what I expected. He laughed. Good different or bad different? I'm not sure. They both smiled. That night, they shared more than warmth. They shared stories. Darren told her about Earth, about how the rain smelled in the mountains, how his mother made food that filled the house with warmth. He spoke about music that made people cry, even when they didn't understand the words. Mira listened quietly. She didn't interrupt. Every word he said was new, like a world she never knew existed. When she asked why humans sang, he answered, because it makes us feel like we belong, even when we're alone. She thought about that for a long time. Then, for the first time in her life, she spoke of her own past. She told him about growing up on the Cerulean colony of Velnafor, where everything was orderly, timed, and quiet, where no one raised their voice, and emotions were considered a weakness. No one ever asked me how I felt, she said, only what I learned. Darren looked at her. How do you feel now? Mira didn't answer. She didn't know, but something inside her had changed. The next morning, the rescue crew arrived. They used a lift to pull Mira and Darren out of the cave. Medics rushed to help them, checking their vitals, scanning for injuries. Darren waved them off, saying he was fine. Mira was taken to the medical bay to rest her ankle. She was quiet the whole way. Her fingers still held the edge of Darren's jacket. Later, after the scans and the questions, she sat alone in the recovery room. Her tablet was on the small table beside her. She opened her mission report. She stared at the blinking cursor for several minutes. Then she began to type. Mission log, Day 4. Temporary separation from crew due to planetary cave-in. Rescue with assistance from human engineer Darren. Significant time spent together. She paused, then continued. Human behavior continues to show emotional depth. Darren shared stories of his home, his people, and his feelings. He offered comfort. Without being asked, he smiled when I did not expect it. He asked me how I felt. She stopped again. Her hand hovered over the screen. Then she added the final line. Human, what have you done? I can't stop thinking about you. She quickly closed the file. That evening, Mira walked through the halls of the ship. Her ankle was healing, but her mind was restless. She passed the engineering section and paused. Through the window, she saw Darren at work. He was welding a loose panel, humming a quiet tune. She didn't enter. She didn't wave. But she stood there for a long time, watching him. Something inside her was different now. She couldn't explain it, but she could feel it. It was like a quiet current running beneath her skin. Not painful, not dangerous. Just new. The next day, Mira returned to her duties. She joined the command meetings. She read reports. She followed the schedule. But her attention was divided. She kept hearing Darren's voice in her head. There's more to living than just surviving. At night, she opened the data files on human history. She read about Earth's music, their traditions, their way of expressing joy and pain. She listened to recordings of human songs. One of them made her eyes water. She didn't understand why. She just sat still, holding the edge of the human engineer's jacket, and listened. The feeling didn't go away. In the following days, Mira avoided Darren, not because she was angry, but because she didn't understand what she was feeling. She told herself it was just confusion, a reaction to being stuck in a cave, nothing more. But the more she tried to forget, the more she remembered. His words, his smile, his warmth. One evening, she finally walked past engineering again. She kept her head forward, eyes ahead. But then she heard his voice. Hey, Mira. She stopped, slowly. She turned. Darren stood in the doorway, wiping grease from his hands. Good to see you up and walking. Mira nodded. Thank you. There was silence between them. Then Darren spoke softly. If you ever want to talk again, or just sit and hum in silence, I'm round. He didn't smile this time. He just looked at her with calm eyes. Then he turned and walked back inside. Mira stood there a moment longer. She didn't follow. Not yet. But her feet didn't want to walk away either. Mira returned to her normal duties. But something inside her was no longer the same. She walked through the clean metal halls of the Unity, datapad in hand, but her eyes drifted often. Every time she passed engineering, her steps slowed. She told herself it was part of her observation, part of the mission. But she knew that wasn't true. She had not spoken to Darren since that moment outside engineering. And yet, his words still echoed in her thoughts. In the officer's lounge, Mira sat alone at a small table, quietly typing her latest report. She kept her expression neutral, but she could feel glances from the other Ceruleans nearby. They whispered, not loudly, but enough. Her commanding peer, Varen, walked past her table and stopped. You have not submitted the report for the cave incident, he said. I'm finalizing the data, Mira replied without looking up. Varen's eyes narrowed slightly. I reviewed security logs. The human engineer stayed beside you the entire time, even when it wasn't required. Mira lifted her head. Yes, he did. That is unusual, Varen said, and so is your behavior. I followed protocol, she answered quickly. Are you sure you followed it completely? His tone was sharp, but his face stayed calm. Ceruleans never raised their voices, even in judgment. Mira stood. If you have questions about my conduct, you may file a formal notice. Varen nodded. I may do that. He turned and walked away. Mira sat back down, but her chest felt tight. Later that day, she walked through one of the empty hydroponic bays. The green plant swayed gently under artificial light. This place was quiet, a break from the eyes and whispers. But someone else was there. She heard soft humming from behind the water tanks. She paused. Darren stepped out, holding a wrench and wiping sweat from his brow. When he saw her, his smile faded. I didn't think you'd come here, he said. I needed quiet, she replied. He nodded. Same. Mira looked at him. His sleeves were rolled up, hands stained with oil. His expression was tired but kind. She didn't speak for a moment. Then she asked, do the others talk about us? Darren leaned back against the wall. Maybe. I try not to listen. They think something happened in the cave. Something did happen. Darren said softly, you saw me. I saw you. Not just with eyes. We were real with each other. Mira looked away. That is not how Ceruleans speak. Then maybe Ceruleans need new words. His tone wasn't teasing. It was honest. She met his gaze again. You confuse me. I confuse myself sometimes, he said with a small smile. Mira didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to walk away. The other part wanted to stay. She stayed. That night, Mira reviewed the data files again. Her tablet glowed softly in her hands as she sat in her private room. She had written the same sentence over and over, deleting it every time. Something inside me is changing. She couldn't bring herself to send the report. Her chest ached, with a feeling she couldn't name. It wasn't fear. It wasn't pain. It was something new. And it had started the moment Darren placed his jacket over her shoulders in that cold cave. She stared at the line again. Human, what have you done? I can't stop thinking about you. Then she shut the tablet off. The next morning, Mira attended the briefing in the command deck. Captain Orrin, a calm and experienced human leader, was giving orders for the next jump to the Astron system. Everything was routine, until an alert flashed across the screen. Unauthorized data scan detected. The captain looked up sharply. Where is it coming from? One of the officers replied, it's internal. Someone tried to access restricted medical files. Mira's pulse quickened. Varen stood up slowly from his seat. Captain, I believe there is a matter that concerns both your crew and ours. I request a private meeting. Orrin nodded. In the private meeting room, Mira sat facing Captain Orrin, Varen, and the medical officer, Dr. Halen. Varen tapped on his tablet. I found signs of abnormal emotional activity in Ambassador Mira's scans following her rescue. Mira sat straight. That is a violation. My medical scans are not open for Cerulean review. Dr. Halen spoke. It's true, Captain. Cerulean officers requested data access without permission. Orrin frowned. That's not acceptable. Varen remained calm. We were concerned about emotional imprinting. It can happen during trauma, especially when one forms a connection with another species. Dr. Halen nodded slowly. It's rare, but not impossible. Mira kept her voice steady. So I experienced something new. That does not make me weak. It makes you compromised, Varen said. Oren leaned forward. She's not compromised. She's becoming more than what she was. Varen looked at him. That is not your call to make. Mira stood. Then let it be mine. The room fell silent. She breathed slowly. I did feel something. I still do. But it does not make me unfit. It makes me aware. More aware than I have ever been. Oren gave her a small nod. Well said. Varen looked displeased but didn't argue further. The meeting ended quietly. That evening, Mira walked into engineering without warning. Darren looked up from a panel and smiled. To what do I owe the honor? I am tired of hiding, she said. He put down his tools. Me too. Mira stepped closer. I told them the truth today. About me? About us, she said. There was a long pause. Then Darren asked, Are you still confused? She shook her head. Now I'm curious. He tilted his head. Curious about what? What it means to feel this way. What it means to be seen. Darren smiled. We can figure it out together. She nodded. And for the first time, she smiled back without hesitation. In her private room later, Mira opened her report again. She deleted the earlier notes and wrote only one thing. I used to believe emotion was a flaw. Now I believe it is a beginning. She saved the file without fear. Then she opened the music recordings Darren had given her. She listened quietly, holding the same jacket he once gave her. The warmth hadn't faded, and neither had the feeling. After the meeting with Varen and the captain, Mira returned to her duties with a calm face. She attended the briefings. She walked the halls. She typed her reports on time. From the outside, everything looked normal again. But inside, she was not the same. She could feel it in her chest like a quiet storm. Not loud, not wild, just always there. She tried to push it away, but it stayed. It was Darren. His voice, his smile. The way he looked at her like she wasn't just part of a report. He made her feel seen. He made her feel real. And that scared her. Today's passed without any direct contact between them. Mira avoided engineering completely. When she saw Darren walking down a hallway, she turned around quickly and went another way. She told herself it was better. She needed space. The emotions were still too strong, too confusing. But distance didn't help. It only made her feel empty. She ate alone in the dining hall while the humans laughed and shared stories nearby. She listened to them from her quiet corner, but she didn't join. Her food had no taste. Her thoughts kept drifting to him. That evening, she walked to the observation deck. The stars looked close through the wide glass window. She placed one hand on the cold glass. A memory came. Darren in the cave, pointing up at the sky through the narrow crack. His voice had been soft then. Different view. Same stars. She closed her eyes and whispered, Why do I miss you when you're still here? The next morning, Mira requested a transfer. She went to Captain Oren's office and stood straight, arms behind her back. I would like to move to the navigation section for the remainder of the mission, she said. The captain raised an eyebrow. Any reason? I feel it would be best for focus. He leaned back in his chair, watching her. This isn't about duty. It's about him. Mira's face didn't change. I believe a change of section will help. Oren gave a slow nod. As you wish. I'll sign the order. Before she left, he added, avoiding him won't erase what happened. Mira paused at the door. I am not trying to erase it. Then what are you doing? She didn't answer, because she didn't know. The new section was quiet. The navigation crew worked with numbers, maps, and silent focus. It suited her. There was little talking, and everyone kept to their task. But even in the silence, Darren stayed in her mind. She saw him in small things. When a crew member laughed softly, it sounded like him. When she touched a warm tool, she remembered the heat of his jacket. And when she sat alone, she felt the absence of his voice more than anything. She tried to sleep that night, but the silence was too loud. She reached for her tablet and opened one of the music recordings he had shared. The soft notes filled the room, simple, slow, and full of feeling. She held the edge of the jacket still folded at the foot of her bed. It smelled like metal and warmth. It still felt like him. On the fifth day, while walking back from her shift, Mira passed by hydroponics again. She stopped at the entrance, not sure why. Inside, everything was quiet except the soft trickle of water. She stepped in. The plants were tall now. Some had flowers blooming in colors she had never seen. She walked slowly between the rows. At the far end, near the vents, someone was sitting cross-legged. It was Darren. He didn't notice her at first. He was fixing a small control panel near the irrigation line. She stood still, unsure if she should speak. But then he turned his head and saw her. He froze. Their eyes met. For a moment, no words came. Then Darren gave a small nod. Hey, she nodded back. Hello. He stood up slowly, brushing dirt from his pants. I heard you transferred. He said. Double quotes, yes. Was it because of me? Mira didn't answer right away. Then she said, it was because of what I was feeling. He took a step closer. You could have talked to me. I didn't know how. I would have listened. She looked away. I wasn't ready. Darren nodded. Are you ready now? She looked up again. Her voice was quiet. I don't know, but I'm tired of pretending I don't think about you. His eyes softened. I never stopped thinking about you either. There was a long silence between them, but it wasn't heavy. It was gentle. They sat on the floor together, back against the warm wall. Mira looked at him. Do all humans talk this much? Only the good ones, he replied with a smile. She gave a small smile too. You talk too much. Then why are you here? I don't know. Maybe to listen. He laughed. Fair enough. They didn't speak for a while after that. The sound of the water and soft humming machines filled the space. Then Darren asked, do you ever wonder why we met? Mira looked ahead. I used to think it was chance. And now I think I was supposed to feel something and learn from it. He leaned his head against the wall. And what have you learned? She turned to face him. That I am not just logic, that I can feel. And it doesn't make me weak. Darren nodded. Feelings make us brave. She thought about that. Maybe that was true. After a while, they stood up together. Before they left the room, Darren gently touched her sleeve. If you ever want to talk again, about anything, your home, your thoughts, or just silence, I'm here. Mira gave a small nod. Thank you. He stepped aside, letting her walk first. As she passed, she felt her heart beat faster. But this time, she didn't push it away. That night, she didn't write a mission report. She simply opened a blank screen and typed a short message. I thought distance would clear my mind, but it only made the silence louder. I do not want silence anymore. She saved the note, closed her eyes, and let the music play again. This time, she listened with a full heart. And for the first time, she smiled alone, not from duty, not from success, but from something else. From hope. Mira sat alone in the medbay, staring at the soft glow of the ceiling light. The room smelled of clean air and faint medicine. She was not sick or injured, but she had come anyway. Something inside her felt strange. She needed answers. Dr. Halen, the human medical officer, stood nearby, looking at a scan of her brain. The monitor showed lines and colors that Mira didn't fully understand. Your vitals are fine. The doctor said, no sign of infection. No damage from the cave incident. Mira nodded. That is not what I'm concerned about. Dr. Halen looked at her carefully. Then tell me, I'm feeling things I don't recognize. I can't control them. They started after I was rescued. After being with Darren, Mira hesitated. Then she said, yes. The doctor walked over and sat across from her. There's something we know about emotional imprinting, she said. It's rare, but when two people go through stress or danger together, something changes. Their minds bond, sometimes deeply. For humans, it can feel like love. For Cerealians, it's different, but no less real. Mira looked down at her. Hans, my people don't talk about this. They treat emotions like a problem. Maybe that's why it hit you harder. You've been trained to push it down. But it's still there, stronger now. Is it permanent? Dr. Halen shrugged gently. I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. But one thing is certain, it's real. Mira closed her eyes for a moment. Her heart beat faster. It wasn't fear. It was something warmer. When I'm near him, she said quietly, my mind feels calm. But when I walk away, it feels like something's missing. The doctor smiled softly. That sounds human to me. Later that day, Mira returned to her room. The medbay felt safe, but the ship still felt too loud, too full of things she didn't understand. She sat on her bed, pulling Darren's jacket close. It still held the faint scent of his work metal. Heat and something soft she couldn't name. She looked out the small window, where distant stars moved past slowly. She had traveled between worlds, studied languages and systems. She had trained to stay calm in any situation. But now, one human engineer had shaken her entire world. In the Cerulean section of the ship, Varen met with a senior officer. Through a secure transmission, his voice was calm, but firm. Mira is compromised, he said, emotionally bonded to a human. I believe she's no longer fit for objective observation. The officer on the screen nodded. If that's confirmed, she'll be called back. Emotional instability cannot continue. Varen ended the call and closed his tablet. He didn't feel angry. He felt disappointed. Mira had once been a strong observer. Now, in his eyes, she had become something else. Something dangerous. Meanwhile, in engineering, Darren worked quietly. He adjusted a panel, tightened a bolt, and wiped his hands on a rag. But his mind was elsewhere. He hadn't seen Mira in over a day. She had come to hydroponics, said some honest words, then disappeared again. No message, no visit. He tried not to take it personally, but it wasn't easy. One of his teammates, a younger mechanic named Roan, walked by and gave him a friendly nudge. You all right, Darren? Yeah, just thinking about her. Darren didn't answer. Roan smiled. You're not the first human to fall for someone who doesn't follow the same rules. But if it's real, it's worth the wait. Darren smiled faintly. Thanks. But deep inside, he wondered what if the wait led to nothing. That night, Mira finally made a decision. She walked through the quiet halls toward the main communication room. The place was empty, most of the crew asleep. She opened a private channel to the Cerulean Science Center back home. Her screen blinked, then showed an elder Cerulean woman with silver eyes and a lined face. Mira, the elder said, we received your request. I need to understand what's happening to me, Mira said. Not just physically, emotionally. The elder tilted her head. You feel bonded, yes, to a human. There was a pause. Then the elder sighed. It is rare, but not impossible. It's not a sickness. It's a reaction. Your mind linked with his. Survival, care, understanding all mixed together. Can it be reversed? Not easily, and not without pain. We are taught to ignore emotion, but that doesn't make us immune. Mira looked down. I don't want to forget him. The elder leaned closer to the screen. Then don't, but you must be prepared. Some will not accept this bond. They will call it a weakness, I know. But it may also be your strength, the elder said softly. It may be the one thing that makes us see what we've missed for centuries. Mira closed the call with a new feeling rising inside. Her not fear, not confusion, but purpose. The next day, Varen confronted her in the hallway. You spoke to the elders, he said. Yes. And what did they say? That I must decide for myself. Varen stepped in front of her. You are walking a dangerous path, Mira. This is not the way of our people. No, she said calmly. It's not, but maybe it should be. He stared at her for a moment, then walked away without another word. Mira stood still, heart steady. She went straight to engineering. Darren looked up, surprised to see her. Mira? She stepped inside and stood close. I spoke to the medical officer, she said. Then I spoke to the elders. I told them the truth. He set his tools down. And what did they say? That feelings like this are rare. That they change you. That some may never understand. Darren waited, unsure what she would say next. Mira took a small step forward. I don't want to erase it. I don't want to forget you. He smiled. Slowly. Good, because I don't want to forget you either. She reached into her bag and held out his jacket. "I've kept this," she said. "Not because I needed warmth, but because it reminded me of something I never had before." He took the jacket gently. Their hands touched. The silence between them was warm now, not heavy. Mira met his eyes. "I still don't fully understand what I feel, but I want to find out. With you." Darren nodded. "Then let's figure it out. Together." That night, Mira wrote a new report. It wasn't for her superiors. It wasn't for the Science Council. It was for herself. There are things we cannot learn from data or silence. Things we only learn through connection. I used to believe feeling made us weak. Now I believe it opens doors we never knew existed. Maybe this is not a failure. Maybe this is the first step towards something new. She closed the file and walked to the observation deck. Darren stood there, looking out at the stars. She stepped beside him. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The stars moved slowly outside the window. And for the first time, Mira didn't feel like a visitor in the human world. She felt like she belonged. The following morning, Mira woke up earlier than usual. She had not slept much, but for the first time in weeks, her mind was quiet. There was no pressure in her chest, no storm of thoughts pulling her in different directions. She knew what she felt, and she was ready to face the consequences of her choice. Darren was already in engineering, working on a damaged cooling system. He didn't notice Mira until she spoke. "I want to help," she said. He looked up and blinked. "You sure?" She stepped closer. "Yes, I'm not hiding anymore." He handed her a tool and smiled. "Then let's fix something." They worked side by side, focused and quiet. The crew passing by glanced at them but said nothing. Their bomb was no longer a secret. It was something real, something solid, and it was beginning to show. Later that day, Captain Wren called Mira to his office. He sat behind a glass desk, his hands folded. "I've been watching the reports," he said. "You've been acting differently." Mira stood tall. "I have, and I'll answer your questions." Wren nodded slowly. "I'm not here to punish you, but you're part of a diplomatic program. You were trained to observe, not to get involved." "I understand," she replied. "But what I feel, it wasn't planned. It just happened." The captain sighed. "Feelings are not against the law, but there are rules. If your people find out, they may pull you back. If the Alliance sees it as interference, they may act too." Mira kept her voice steady. "I'm prepared. Are you?" "Yes." Wren leaned forward. "Then you must know what you're risking." "I do," she said. "But I also know what I'm gaining." The captain looked at her in silence for a few seconds. Then he nodded. "Very well. I won't stand in your way. But you need to speak with the council soon. They'll want answers. I'll be ready." Meanwhile, word of Mira and Darren's bond had begun to spread across the ship. Some whispered quietly in corners. Others stared when the two passed by in the halls. Not everyone understood. Some respected it, some did not. One evening, while Darren was fixing a vent in a storage room, two crewmen walked in. "You're the one who's with the alien girl," one of them said. Darren stayed calm. "That's right." The second crewman laughed softly. "Never thought I'd see a human fall that deep." Darren stood up and faced them. "She saved my life too. She cares more than most people I've worked with." They didn't say anything else. They just walked away. But the message was clear. Not everyone approved. Still, Darren didn't let it shake him. He knew Mira, and she knew him. That was enough. On the other side of the ship, Varen was writing his own report. He had watched Mira carefully since the day she was pulled from the cave. He had noted the change in her eyes, her voice, and her decisions. Now he was preparing to send a full report back to the Cerulean Council. Subject Mira has emotionally bonded with a human engineer. She no longer acts within standard observer protocol. Her presence may cause political instability if revealed. He paused, reading his own words. Then he added one more sentence. "However, her emotional state appears stable, and her behavior has not caused damage to the mission or the crew." He stared at the screen, unsure if he should send it. Then he pressed the key. The message was gone. That night, Mira and Darren sat on the floor of hydroponics, surrounded by plants and soft lights. The space was quiet, green, and peaceful. Do you think we'll be allowed to stay like this? Mira asked. I don't know, Darren answered, but I want to try. She looked at him, her eyes soft. I was trained to avoid feelings like this. I was told they would cloud my thoughts, break my focus. Did they? No. They cleared my mind. They reminded me that I'm alive. Darren smiled. You saved me in that cave. I thought I was going to die, but then I saw your face, and something told me not to give up. I felt the same. They sat in silence for a moment. Mira reached out and took his hand. Her touch was gentle, uncertain, but strong. I don't know what happens next, she said. Whatever it is, Darren replied, we'll face it together. The next day, an official message came from the Cerulean Council. It was short and direct. Mira is requested to attend a direct communication session within 24 hours. The topic, emotional breach of protocol. She read the message without emotion. Then she went to Darren. I have to speak with them, she said. They'll want to question me. Darren nodded. Do you want me to come? No. I have to face them alone. He understood. She placed her hand gently on his shoulder. No matter what they say, I won't forget who I am, or what I've found here. Inside the secure communication room, the screen flickered on, revealing 3 high-ranking Cerulean elders. Their faces were cold and serious. Mira, one of them, said, your report was received, but other reports suggest your actions go beyond simple study. I know, Mira replied. You allowed yourself to become emotionally compromised. Yes, you admit it, I do. The elders were silent for a moment. Then one of them spoke again. This type of behavior goes against centuries of Cerulean conduct. You were trained to observe, not to engage. Mira looked into the screen, steady and calm. I engaged because I saw something worth engaging with. I felt something real. It didn't make me weaker. It made me more complete. Do you plan to continue this relationship? Yes. You know the consequences. I do. There was another pause. Then the oldest elder said something Mira didn't expect. Very well. We do not understand your choice, but we respect your honesty. We will not remove you, but your actions will remain on record. I accept that. The screen turned off. The room fell silent, and Mira smiled softly to herself. She had passed the test. Later, when she returned to engineering, Darren met her with a worried look. Well, they didn't send me home, she said. But they made it clear. I've broken tradition. He stepped closer. Do you regret it? No. They stood quietly in the corridor. Then she took his hand again. From now on, she said, I live by what I choose, not just what I was told. Darren nodded. Then you're more human than you think. Mira laughed softly, the sound light. An honest dot. For the first time in her life, she wasn't following a plan. She was building her own. And it felt right. The crew of the Horizon Trail gathered in the central hall for the mission's final debrief. They were approaching the outer boundary of the Cerulean human shared space, and soon many of them would transfer to other vessels or return to their HOMEW or LDS. Darren stood at the edge of the room, his arms crossed as he scanned the crowd. His mind wasn't on the mission or the maps displayed on the screen. It was on Mira. She stood at the other end, dressed in her Cerulean uniform, her face calm but distant. They had grown close, but both knew that this moment was coming. Mira had completed her mission. She had faced her council. She had been allowed to stay for now, but there was no guarantee of what came next after the briefing ended. Mira walked outside the hall into the quieter part of the ship. Darren followed her, footsteps light. I thought you already left, she said without turning. I was waiting for you. She looked at him with soft eyes. I was just thinking about what happens after this. So was I, he said. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hallway lights flickered gently, casting soft glows on the walls. I've been offered a position on the Horizon Trail's new sister ship, Mira said. It's a research vessel. They want me to help lead a team studying long-term emotional influence and cross-species contact. Darren nodded. That sounds like the perfect job for you. It is. but it's based far from Earth, far from you. He looked away. I've been offered a job on Mars. Engineering division. Stable post. Good team. She smiled slightly. Also far from me. I know, he said. But I haven't decided yet. Mira leaned against the wall. Her hands rested on the edge of her uniform belt. Have you ever wondered, she said softly, what this would have been like if we had met under different stars? Darren nodded. I think about it every day. They both laughed gently. Then he stepped closer. But we didn't meet under different stars. We met right here. And even though it's strange, and maybe even against rules or plans or logic, I wouldn't change any of it. She reached up and touched the side of his face. Neither would I. A few days later, the transfer orders arrived. Mira's departure time was set. She had only a few hours left on the Horizon Trail. She went to the observation deck. It was quiet there. She looked out at the star field, her thoughts spinning. The Cerulean ship that would carry her to the research mission floated nearby. She had already sent them her confirmation. But now, as the stars shimmered beyond the glass, she questioned everything. Her heart was heavy, not with sadness, but with weight. The kind that came before making a decision that changes everything. Footsteps echoed behind her. Darren, I figured I'd find you here, he said. I almost left without saying goodbye, she replied. But I couldn't. He stood beside her. Is that really what you want? That ship? That mission? I thought it was, she said. But now I'm not sure. He didn't push her. He simply stood there. Then she asked, what did you choose a Mars? He shook his head. I turned it down. I didn't want to go somewhere if I didn't know where you'd be. Mira's voice dropped. And what will you do now? I was thinking of joining the civilian crew of the Cerulean Research Base. They need engineers, especially ones who've worked on mixed teams. Her eyes widened. You go with me? I'd go anywhere. If you want me there. Mira looked at him for a long time. I don't want to be a study. I don't want to be someone's example of cross-species behavior. I just want to live freely. With you. Darren smiled. Then let's do that. A few hours later, they stood on the launch platform together. Mira, now without her Cerulean emblem on her chest, and Darren with a small bag of his tools over his shoulder. The Cerulean ship crew looked confused when they saw him boarding, but Mira explained calmly. This human is now part of my research support. He has experience in joint operations. His presence is necessary. The officer scanned Darren's clearance, then nodded, accepted, as the doors closed behind them. Mira turned to Darren. Are you sure? She asked. I've never been. More sure, he replied. The engines hummed softly as the ship prepared for departure. Through the view window, the Horizon Trail grew smaller. Behind it, Earth twinkled in the distance. Ahead of them was a future neither of them had planned. But both of them wanted it. Weeks passed. The new research station was quiet but peaceful. Mira and Darren worked side by side. They studied emotional memory, decision-making, and behavior across different species. Their partnership became a model of trust and unity. One evening, while walking beside the artificial lake inside the dome, Mira paused. You know, she said, the council may never truly accept us. Then we'll just have to prove them wrong, Darren answered. She smiled and leaned her head against his shoulder. You always make things sound simple, because when you're with someone you care about, it is simple. They kept walking. No guards, no orders. Just two beings under the stars, building something real. Years later, their work was recognized by both human and Cerulean leaders together. They wrote a book titled To Worlds, One Choice. It told their story not just as science, but as something deeper, a reminder that understanding didn't always come from rules or protocols. Sometimes it came from kindness, from trust, from choosing someone even when everything around told you not to. And as Mira once said during a speech on the Earth Mirror Research Council, I came here to observe humans. I ended up learning what it truly means to feel. And Darren added with a smile, she came to watch us. I just reminded her she wasn't alone.